Thank you for watching Hub Radio. How do you watch radio? It's amazing. It's technology. You're watching a radio show live and in color. And this is Hub Radio Phoenix, and this is Backstreet Gossip with Ray Michaels.
Yes, and Uncle Ronnie.
And Ronnie here. And we have with us Bob Lettieri. Now, Bob is a financial guy. And he has been the treasurer for, 4 years of the Arizona, the Arizona GOP, Grand Old Party, for those of you that aren't in the United States, and that's the Republican Party.
Right.
And Bob was handed a kind of a bad hand back 4 years ago when he's fought his way back to bringing the books and records up to snuff and according to the Election Commission rules and so forth. And Bob also ran for the chairman of the Arizona GOP. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this because it looks like enough state committeemen have signed this petition to perhaps have another election. I don't know where this is going. I mean, at least they're going to have a meeting and talk about it. Bob, tell us a little bit about it. And if, in fact, this is going to happen, are you going to be a candidate for state chairman?
Well, I think we have first to accomplish a removal. The first meeting is to remove the chair. If that's successful, then we have 45 days to call for an election to find a new chair. Kelly could run again and be elected, but that's the process we're in right now. First meeting will be a recall meeting. The second meeting, if the recall is, I wouldn't say successful, but if the recall achieves removing the chair, then in 45 days we should have an election to elect a new state of treasurer, chair, secretary, members at large.
So you're recalling all four positions.
That's what the election would be for. Yes, it's a re-election.
So tell us the process that's brought us to this point. So there was the election there, as we heard from Trey. As we heard from him that some of the things weren't followed according to the bylaws, and then people said, we want to take another look at this. There was a decline from the chair position, and now you've gone out to a lot of the state committeemen and gotten enough signatures or close to bring this to a head.
Well,
is that pretty well summed up?
We have enough of state committeeman positions, plus you had to have a requisite number of counties, right? It wasn't only 352 state committeemen. You had to have at least 9 counties represented in those 352. And that is to call a meeting, a special meeting for the removal of the chair. So,
and do you have enough at this point?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
And so will this be scheduled?
It's tentatively scheduled for the 24th of April.
24th of April. Okay.
Now, this is the meeting or the group to determine if there's going to be an election?
This is the meeting. The petitions with enough of votes, according to the bylaws, went out to the secretary of the AZGOP, who then will send out the call letter.
So, Bob, here you sit, you're the treasurer. You did some amazing things. For those of you who don't know the position that the AZGOP was in 4 years ago or a little bit longer, there was some legal action that you had to sort out, some
violations of rules.
Monetary penalties, all of that. But you got all of that, plus you put everybody into the positive. You put the whole GOP into the positive.
Well, when I took over as treasurer, we had $29,000 in the bank. At the end of my first term and beginning of the second term, I turned over $550,000 to the incoming chair and a party free of SEC violations.
Wow, that's amazing.
Good for you.
So you ran for the AZGOP chair.
Right.
You were there. I saw you there
Right.
at the convention. Ron was there as well. And we saw what happened. The first round, it came down to 2 finalists. You put your backing to the second finalist, Sergio, And then very, very quickly it was voted on, but no numbers were given. So that must have given you, not only for the loss, because I'm sure you wanted to win as well, but what were you thinking as you left that convention? What was your first thought on that?
Well, first off, I was allowed to see the tape of the tabulation, right? They did read it off to me and show it to me,
Okay.
right? So I was aware before it was announced to the state committee that I came in third, by a very, very small margin.
Yeah, it was very close.
Yeah, very close. So that's I can tell you that happened. What you're referring to, I'm really not sure of. But here's where I think it comes down to.
If I may, let me interrupt here just for a minute, because I want everybody to know what the rules are here. Because there's such a thing called a plurality. That's the person who gets the most votes. This is a majority of the votes. So a plurality could be that with three candidates, two of them get 33%, one gets 34%. The one with 34% wins. Okay, that's not the rules here. The rules here, you have to have 50% plus one. So in a three-way race, you can go to a second ballot. In other words, you have to vote again.
Right.
The low vote getter drops off, and then you have the vote between the two that were left. So when we're talking about that, I want you to understand that we're not dealing with a plurality. We're dealing with a majority of the votes cast plus 50% plus one vote.
Right.
Okay. So after the election, people were not totally convinced that it was accurate, that there was integrity in the election. And honestly, I didn't really see any evidence of anything wrong. I didn't see any. But when they started to talk about you're going to count the votes, I spoke to the people that were organizing this, and I said, I don't think that's going to accomplish anything, because in order to, what's the sense of counting votes if you don't know what the starting point is? I said, unless you can get a proof point of where you started, how many ballots were printed, go to the credentials committee and find out how many ballots were issued, who has custody of the ballots not issued, and can you account for all of the ballots issued as being properly counted? And from what I understand, the AZGOP was not able to produce those documents. So that's why I tried to lead them in a different direction and say counting the ballots doesn't make any sense to me unless you can verify the starting point.
Right.
Because what are you reconciling back to?
And that's exactly what the GOP was suing the county for doing.
Right.
And yet they didn't want to do that within their own ranks. And that was troubling in its own right. One other thing, Bob, I just wanted to point out, each candidate had 3 minutes. She took a few minutes more than 3, but not so terribly much. But the important thing is, as you recall, we asked if we could do a video after you spoke.
Right.
And we were told no.
Correct.
And yet Kelly did a video after she spoke. I guess rank has its privilege. That should never have happened. If it was good for Kelly, it was good for Bob, and it was good for Sergio, but that didn't happen.
Right.
So it seems to me that a lot of these things can be thought out prior to the actual convention. So how I see it, I want to get your opinion as well, is if the chairman is running for re-election, maybe they should not be in charge of the convention, so that we don't have these things where somebody gets a little bit more time, or things can change, or they make the decisions. They should really step out of that position to run that actual meeting. How do you feel about that?
Well, was Trump in charge of the election?
No.
No.
Then why should the chairman be in charge of her election?
Interesting point.
I see the analogy, but the president never had the position to run the election. He never had that. But as the chair, you do chair the meeting. But I think that it might be good to say, well, there's a vice chair that would, in that case, or that the body says we want so and so to run it, so that everything's fair.
Right. I think that we should appoint an independent
Yeah,
group
right.
to run the election.
Right.
The whole thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think
Verify
that would be a good idea.
credentials.
Yeah.
Right. Account for all of the ballots.
Yeah, like the accounting firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. You know.
There you go.
Well, the real issue here becomes one of, because this election was so unusual, and there's still not been resolved as to whether proper procedures in the presidential and statewide election were held, people have become very dubious as to why that is. And I don't think, if we can't clean up our own backyard, why would we anticipate the county or the state cleaning up their backyard when we as Republicans can't clean up our messes? And
Transparency is what you're saying.
that's right. And it should have all been transparent. Now, you know, it's not a question of whether anybody likes Kelly or doesn't like Kelly. It was perhaps mishandled from the get-go. Whether that was her fault or not, time will tell.
Have you had a chance to speak to either Dr. Kelly Ward, or any of her representatives about what the intent is on this?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Has anybody working towards this? Have they approached the?
I'm sure that
AZGOP?
they've approached Kelly several times in writing, and I don't know that they've ever gotten the response from
Well,
Kelly that
Bill
they're looking
Baird,
for.
I know, has, and I think Sergio as well had done that.
So did.
And they're from down southern Arizona.
So Sergio
But
was.
excuse me. So did Sandra Dowling, and I don't think that they ever received a direct response from Kelly.
Okay. So Sergio was the one who had the runoff. Is he still interested in that position? Do we know?
I don't know.
But you're still interested possibly in running again?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. And now you are a man who, you're always out doing something. So you finished your term, and we thank you for your service as treasurer of the AZGOP. What have you been doing over the last several months to stay in sharp form?
Well, one of the things that I did was working with some people in the party that asked me to distribute a letter asking the Board of Supervisors to have the Dominion machines audited not by the same audit firm that audited them in Texas and said that the machines were good to go, because they said that audit firm has lost its independence.
Mm-hmm.
They can't possibly be objective and do an audit here. And I was able to come up with some alternatives that do the same thing. And I also outlined a form letter that everybody could write to their representatives up and down the line.
So now, are you working with the state President Karen Fann? Are you working with the Senate? Are you working with, I know there's several organizations. Liz Harris has been on here many times. I know AZ, We the People, AZ Alliance.
And
has been doing,
Senator
No, I'm not. No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
The other thing,
Farnsworth has been working with this. He's no
Farnsworth?
longer a sitting senator,
Right?
but he's been very
And-
active
and
in
Senator
this process.
Borelli.
And Senator Borelli, we had
Yeah.
on Monday night.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of people. I just wasn't sure if they were coming to you for your expertise in accounting. I mean, I know Uncle Ronnie's accountant. You're an accountant. There are certain ways, because a
well,
standard.
they did come to me because they were concerned about the audit firm that audited the Dominion machines in Texas being the audit firm for Arizona.
Right.
And that's when I outlined that letter explaining why they shouldn't be, because they lack the independence
Right.
and objectivity.
So you were working to sway them and say,
Right.
"No, you really don't want to do that."
Right. And the other thing I've been involved in is a conservative advocacy group out of D.C. called Madison Coalition that's pushing a new amendment. It's called Keep 9, to prevent Supreme Court packing.
Oh, very
And,
good. Keep
yeah.
9.
Yeah, Keep 9.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've got one congressman to co-sponsor. I have a meeting on Thursday with another congressman to co-sponsor, so I'm going to try to get all 4 Republican congressmen to co-sponsor.
Now, do you believe that there will be anybody on the other side who may sign on to something like this? Could we make this bipartisan?
It is bipartisan.
Yeah?
Absolutely. It is a bipartisan, right? So
Who on the
if
Democrat side is co-sponsored this bill?
you know what? I don't have the list with me, but there are some.
Because I want to have you back to talk about this.
No, this is really important. For those of you who don't follow this, our Supreme Court, the number of Supreme Court judges over historical time has gone up and down, but we've been at 9 for many
150 years.
150 years. So there's a push now to pack the court. In other words, add additional Supreme Court judges, which would fundamentally transform and change what we've been living with for 150 years. They want to do it and I think they want to even have a rotation where people are coming in and out. There's a lot of things that they're thinking about doing, but you have this coalition. It looks like it's national as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Sure, it's national, yeah.
So to keep it at the 9, and that's something that's very, very important.
It's extremely important.
How's the backing on that now?
Well, we're trying to build momentum. We're trying to build public consensus by getting all of the Republican congressmen to co-sponsor. And
Here in
there are-
Arizona.
Across the board,
Oh,
across
wow.
the nation.
Can you give us a couple names who support? I mean, I can think of
You know
several
what,
right
I
now. who would.
can't because I don't have the list with me. I wasn't prepared to talk about that tonight. But I want to make one simple point. Going back to the work that I had to do with the FEC to get the party back in
Federal
compliance.
Elections Commission.
In RH1, right? We've all heard of RH1.
Oh, have we ever?
There is there's 10 items. Towards the back, they want to politicize the FEC.
Are you saying about HR1?
HR1.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I thought that's what I said, sorry.
You know,
If I didn't, it's HR1.
HC is it?
One of their objectives is to politicize the FEC. Now let's think about that. If I wasn't negotiating with a bipartisan FEC, do you think I could have gotten the party the settlement that we did?
There's no way.
Right.
There's no. But people have to understand it is the United States of America, not the United Federal Government of America.
Right.
States have sovereignty, and I truly believe that the 17th Amendment needs to be repealed. It needs to go
I
back.
would agree.
It needs.
Now, but
the
let's
state-
discuss what the 17th Amendment is, and what
Yes.
the original intent of the Constitution was.
Right. Do you want to do it,
No, I can.
or do you want to have Ben Wick on?
Well, I can explain part of it, and then let's just discuss this. Now, we are a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. Now, what does that mean? You keep saying, well, I voted for president. No, you did not vote for president. I have never voted for president. I've made every election since I was eligible to vote. I voted for electors who then voted for president. Now, back in the day, the legislature was made up of representatives and senators. The representatives were elected democratically by the people.
To represent.
However, the Senate was elected by the legislatures.
Selected.
So we voted for legislators who then turned around and voted for senators who went to Washington. They did not have a term. They were not 6-year terms.
Right.
If they voted the wrong way, the legislature would say, you're out of here, and then put somebody else in.
Yeah.
And I think that's much more responsive to the needs of the states.
Well, in a democracy, it's 50 plus 1%. It's mob rule, and that's why our founding fathers did not want a democracy. A republic means that there is a constitution that lays out certain guidelines that cannot be changed except by an amendment. So the
17th Amendment.
Right. So if in the democracy 50 plus 1% of the people say we're all going to wear black shirts on Friday, bad example, but they would go back to the Constitution and said, is that allowed? They can say we want to take away everybody's guns because we have a majority, but they go back to the Constitution and say no, you can't because we have certain rules. That's the republic. Now, when the state legislature selects the senators to go to Washington, D.C., they specifically told the senators, You fight for our state's rights. If the legislature tries to do anything that usurps our power as a sovereign state, you vote against it. You're the ones who are going to be appointing the legislative branch, including the Supreme Court. You are the ones who are going to be doing impeachment. You have certain specific duties that are not for the representatives. But now everybody is worried about being reelected.
So the 17th Amendment took that away.
Right. It
And
says
so
that
now senators are elected for 6 years. So here's the rub. If in your first 6 months you do something stupid, you still got 5.5 years to be there. Now, under the old method, if you did something stupid, the legislature would say, "Come on back here."
But they're not in the position of being a senator for the purpose of protecting the state and
That's
the rights.
correct.
They're
And we
there
know
to be
now.
reelected.
We know now that we have senators that have served for 30-some years. They're an institution amongst themselves.
And they're going against what the state wants them to do. Yeah.
And one of the prime examples of that was John McCain. You know, the legislature, well, even the Republican Party censored him for not doing the things the Republican Party wanted
And
done.
what's
in
the recourse?
legislature.
But see, that was the brilliance of our founding fathers, because it was a checks and balance system.
And
we
actually-
need to work on repealing the 17th
The 17th Amendment.
Yeah.
And we absolutely have to stop this nonsense about trying to get rid of the Electoral College. This is just, if we got rid of the Electoral College, there would be probably Chicago, LA, New York City, and a couple of other huge, gigantic cities
Running
that
the
would
country.
run the country.
Right.
And states like Arizona wouldn't have any say-so in what went on.
Or Hawaii. Look at Hawaii.
Hawaii,
Look at
states,
Delaware.
Alaska.
Look at, yeah. If
And
you don't have a big
what's South
population,
Dakota? I think it's South.
Wyoming,
Wyoming. I think they have
Montana.
2 senators, only 1 representative.
Yeah, it just wouldn't happen. So to be fair, because it is the United States, e pluribus unum, out of many, one, we should all be working for a common cause. And don't buy into this. We're going to separate you because you're this height, you make this amount of money, you come from this ethnic origin. They want to separate us. We have to come together as a nation.
One of my biggest pet peeves, and it happens even on radio and television that are very, very conservative, when they say we're fighting for our democracy. No,
It's
you're
not a
not. You're fighting for our republic,
Representative government.
constitutional
Exactly.
representative government. Because we don't vote directly for them. The only ones we would vote for on a national basis is the representatives. The Senate, no. The President, no. All of those are through representation.
So Bob, you've been on the show many times, even before January when you ran for AZGOP chair, and you gave us kind of a list of what you would do. And now that you see that things are even a little bit more fragmented than they were before, you being in that position, let's just say that you ran. What would you do? What is something that you would
The
stand
first thing I would like to do is I would like to compliment the current people in the AZGOP for implementing my plan. When I campaigned, I was the only one that had a definitive plan that said we are losing ground with PCs. You may have added some PCs, but you've fallen grossly behind the number of seats allowable. Now there's a tremendous push.
There's
for
a big
PCs.
push.
Right.
Everybody is doing this.
Touche to them. Thank you for following my plan. Second, voter registration. I had a really good plan on how to knock on the door of a new resident before they went to the motor vehicles. Now we've got this, whatever it's called, 51 push, who I've spoken to.
Arizona
But
51.
They've got their own way of doing it. Maybe they'll use what I put together, what I made available to them.
But
They're
you
not doing
put
it
this
now.
together a while ago. This was
Right, so they're following that. Next, what I'm hearing when I said that there'll be a place at the table for everybody, because it was a one-person show.
Right.
Now I'm hearing, oh, I was given a job. Oh, I was given responsibility. So all I can say is that, great, I'm happy you're implementing my plan. Where were you the 2 years that you were in office?
Right.
So, yes, a couple of other things that I had was I wanted us to be more active in redistricting. the Democrats are ahead of us right now on redistricting. So hopefully they'll pick that back up. But there were several other things that that I had as parts of my plan.
What did you have as part of your plan to work directly with the state legislature? Did you have anything where the AZGOP chair would have more of a voice or more of an input to help the legislative process, whether it's individually or...
It was what I advocated very strongly is that we should have debates at the primary level to make sure that we had the best possible candidate. Now, I got some pushback on that from certain people that said that's a mistake because an incumbent wouldn't give audience to a startup and raise his awareness to the same level of the incumbent.
But what if it was a requirement?
And I said, there's two things wrong with what you said. One is, how do you know you're getting the best possible candidate to represent the Republican Party against a Democrat? Secondly, if an incumbent is doing a good job, he has nothing to fear about raising the awareness of a new person.
Right.
So that's something that I don't know that they will pick up on because it did get some pushback, but I would have done it if elected.
Well, Uncle Ronnie, we talked about this a lot. What's mind-boggling to me is that every single position that's elected is a servant position. And as a servant, if you see that somebody can do a better job than you, then you step back because you're serving. It shouldn't be about them. It shouldn't be about what I can do.
That's what's wrong with career politicians.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, see, that part of the, at least of the, now you have to remember, the elections for House members is every 2 years. So they're running constantly for re-election. I mean, as soon as they are elected and sworn in, they're worrying about the next 2 years. So they've got to do a good job. Senators, not so much. But the way it was before, if you're looking after the interests of the state, which that's what they were there for, and they're not. They could be recalled, and the legislature just said, come on back here, you're fired.
Right.
And we'll put somebody else in that will look after the interests of our state. And, that's why every state has the same number of representatives, well, senators, let's put it that way, is because they wanted that equality in the upper chamber. Now, the House is based on population, but the Senate is based on states.
Right.
They represent the state of Arizona.
Right, but but sometimes they're not.
No,
Most
but they
of the
should
time
be.
They're not.
But you see now here, I mean, David Swikert is my congressman, and he represents the will of the people in Congressional District 6, or should. It's a very simple process, and it was, to me, it was genius. I'm not sure that the three of us could have sat down and designed something this
Maybe
well.
Bob on his own, but not the three of us.
We just follow the leader.
Well, it's exciting and it's disconcerting at the same time, because when you have a servant mentality, you need to be very humble, and I don't see a lot of servants or politicians being humble. And it's concerning, because this is why we want you to become a PC. We want you to get involved. We want you to make a difference. We want the input. We want that every decision that is made from a state and national level to affect you intimately. I guarantee you, when our Speaker of the House makes a decision, she is not affected at all. Because they'll say, well, we don't have to do that because we're protected. We live behind this fortress that you can't touch us.
Well, let's talk about the concept of representing the people. Now, the mayor of Phoenix, Gallego, the governor now has said, that we're going to release the mask issues, and you can wear masks if you wish, and if you own a facility, a store or something, you make the decision as to whether your customers should wear a mask or not.
Right.
Okay, and that's kind of the way it should be. Now she's saying, oh, I don't agree with that. People in Phoenix have to wear a mask no matter where they go. Well, quite frankly, I look at myself as an individual. I'll determine what I think is best for my future, my health, my issues, and you don't have the authority to tell me I have to do something. We as Americans have given up so much of our freedoms
That's right.
to the authoritarian politicians. You can't meet here. You can't go to a restaurant. You got to wear a mask. Got to stay 6 feet apart. You got to close all the restaurants. So now we can open them, but you can only have 25% capacity. You and I are both accountants. How do you make a living as a restaurateur with only 25%?
It's impossible.
Here's how you do it. You depend upon the government to give you money to stay open, and then the government is so in debt that it declares bankruptcy, and then the socialists declare a wealth tax and take away every incentive
And that's exactly
for people
what
to
they're
create.
doing now.
That's right.
That's exactly what
right.
Biden administration is doing.
And you flood the country with
Bogus dollar bills that are being printed with no production
and you open
or
the
backing
borders.
Yeah.
Let everybody in
without COVID testing, so you're letting them
without
in.
testing, without any background checks. Just come on in.
You've just outlined HR1 for us.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something. So please look that up, HR1. They will sell it as this is fair, this is equitable for everybody.
And everybody should vote. You don't have to be
Everybody.
registered. You just go in and say, I want to vote, and vote.
Yeah. Yeah, no ID.
Well,
which
one
is
of the other things that was always a pet peeve of mine, and Trey knows this very well because he was in the military. You go in there and you give away a number of years of your life, and you're willing to give your life up for the future of our country and for its citizens, current citizens yet unborn, and they don't even respect you. The federal government does not respect its military personnel. For instance, right now, and we talked about this Monday night, Bob, we have all these immigrants on the illegals, I call them, coming into the United States. They don't have places for them, so they're spending $89 or $85 million to put them in hotel rooms. In Washington, D.C., we have National Guard units that are watching the city, and they have to sleep on the floor in parking garages.
Concrete floors.
Concrete floors in
Yeah.
parking garages, and share whatever toiletries there are there, if there's one or two restrooms there, and maybe some porta potties. These are men and women that give up their lives for our country, and the people that sneak in here are staying in hotels, for God's sake, at yours and my taxpayer expense.
Yeah. Well, look at the California.
What's wrong with this?
How about the California prison system?
Oh,
They get more benefits than the people in the military. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense.
right.
But we're going to do something about it, and that's why we're here.
Well, that's why Hub Radio's here. And I want to just give you another kicker here. Hub Radio is dependent upon some of the funding that you may be able to give us. Go to our website, backstreetgossip.com, and there's a donation button there. And we sure could use a little bit of money. Our rent went up here, and I'm not saying that our landlord is a bad guy, because he's not a bad guy, but everything's going up these days, and we try to provide as much as we can to you, our viewers, for free.
Yeah. And always remember, we are governed by our consents. You consent that they govern you. You don't like what they're doing? Make a difference.
Bob Lettieri, we'd like to thank you for being here. We want to have you on the
Any words of wisdom, Bob?
Beware of HR1. Be really aware of HR1.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So call your representatives.
We'd like
call
to
your
thank
senators.
We'd like to thank Neil for driving this show tonight, and he's still driving. We got a couple of seconds here left, but thank you so very much for joining us. We'll see you Wednesday night on what is Wednesday night?
Fighting Back.
Yes. And next week we're going to have some big shows on Backstreet Gossip too.
And also, Uncle Ronnie is working on a way to get people back together, have some meetings maybe over here. Stop by our place. You got great books, you got t-shirts, you got lots of great stuff going on over here.
3238 East Bell Road in Phoenix. Thank you, good night, and we will see you Wednesday night on Fighting Back. Thank you, Mr. Ray. Thank you, Bob. And Neil, thank you.